So I'll go very quickly. I really wanted to talk about my experiences in sharing decentralized science ideas with the wider scientific community. So I discovered decentralized science a couple of years ago. I write part-time for Cointelegraph, so I wrote an article about decentralized science in April of 2022. And as a result, I got to meet lots of people in the decentralized science community, which I think is kind of a special community in crypto. Um, and basically, I was doing a lot of research at the RMIT Blockchain Innovation Hub, which is in Melbourne, Australia. I'm dialing in from Sydney, Australia. So it's quite early in the morning here. I had to wake up in the night for this presentation, which is obviously a display of commitment to the decentralized science community. But basically, I did a report on DAOs, and it sort of spiraled into this thing where I ended up in an incubator for Australia's National Science Authority. So the point of my presentation is really just to explain, because we had an event actually in Sydney yesterday for all the alumni of the program, what that looks like. But before I begin, I just want to say it's also the first day of Hanukkah today, which is a Jewish holiday where there's a lighting of the candles that should bring light into the world. And I hope that the hostages that were captured by Hamas should be speedily returned to their families. So I just want to mention that. I think it's very important at this point in history. So I basically wrote a report on DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, at the university, and the university basically offered me a grant and said, can we build this into an actual project, right? So Maria might appreciate this. I had this idea for a long time of an intellectual property repository for like early stage research and what that would look like. So that's how it really began. But what I want to share in my slides is my final presentation that I gave to this incubator for Australia's national science body, which really tries to translate research from universities into commercial products. That's the premise of the incubator. So this is not this slide now, but the next slide. This is what I came up with. So an untapped opportunity. 90% of research is not publicly accessible, yet the Australian government invests $10 billion in R&D each year. So that was really the problem set up, that every single person in that room, every single person in the wider science community understands this problem, right? Research sits on a shelf, it doesn't go anywhere. And it's like Maria mentioned, but basically funding grants are there. They're provided often by governments, and the spend on it is completely inefficient, and it's not really accessible. So there's no value to a national economy for any of that work. So that's kind of the problem. Everyone gets the problem. Now, I'll come to my lessons at the end for the community, but the point is that the scientific community understands these problems. No one disputes the problems of decentralized science. Everyone completely understands the movement. And then I talked about my idea as a repository. So what I realized is that the issue was actually giving researchers trust. So forked IP DAO, the idea was safe feedback for early discoveries without risking patents. So the idea of decentralized science, the idea of early stage research going into a blockchain based solution, right? What bothered people, and in the presentation I barely mentioned the concept of a DAO, was really this idea that how do we trust the system? How do we trust blockchain? How do we trust the crypto community? How do we trust these people? Who are these people? That was really the kind of way that this research emerged throughout the project. So what actually happened is I only talked about blockchain, and most people, even last night I had these conversations, most people in the scientific community are like, oh, blockchain, enterprise blockchain is still the same thing. Enterprise blockchain is fine. Don't mention crypto. Crypto is scary. Monetization, tokenization, this kind of thing is very scary for researchers, but it's also scary for the commercialization community, because they feel that, basically all the negative stereotypes have at least if it's not obvious to them or palpable for them, it's at least a little bit of a gray area. They're like, oh, I don't really get it. It's in the too hard basket. So the idea that I came to with this project, which is still going, but it's not, this presentation is not about my project. It was really this idea that patent protection is important. So this project became nothing to do with crypto, nothing to do with blockchain. It became a legal question. So how do researchers disclose information without voiding a future patent? That's what they were scared about. The idea of a DAO, the only time I actually mentioned in the presentation was in point 2, a rules-based and voting governance mechanism, right? So the only reason we could kind of work it out as a concept was if everyone in the scientific community, everyone as part of the stakeholder, mapping, would actually have a vote and a way that they can feel like their governance is heard. But some of the other things that we seem to hit on was speed of recognizing commercial potential. With a blockchain-based system, the way that the IP could be deposited was appealing to people, and others have validated this idea. Investors include Pfizer. So when I talked about that, that was VitaDAO. Now, some people in the community say VitaDAO is sort of the benchmark, but there's to get a lot of attention. But the point is, one thing that resonated with the scientific community is when I mentioned VitaDAO, it was like, these guys are doing it. These guys have Pfizer backing them. Immediately, people were like, oh, okay, hang on, wait, this isn't just a theoretical concept. This is happening already. Decentralized science is happening already. That was a really powerful marker. And I promise you, a lot of people in the scientific community, that was their turning point when they started to listen to me more, was when they were like, okay, someone's actually done this. It's not just like some theoretical thing. That's what happened in the incubator. The incubator is basically go out and find your market. So I did all these hours. I went through all these hypotheses. I spoke with all these different people. Some of these people are crypto people, but most of these people are not crypto people. This is me talking to people in the scientific community to understand what they want, what they're looking for. And what I found was the issue wasn't with blockchain. The issue was with protecting their research, protecting their work, protecting their ideas. The idea of royalties or something like that, if you think about IP NFTs or something like that, was palatable to them. But you can see that's how this project took place, and it was a really interesting kind of piece of research for the decentralized science community, at least in Australia. Interview insights, so framework for early IP discovery, key to unlocking commercial potential. So the idea of this is trying to expedite research using blockchain. That was what I came up with. Need for stakeholder collaboration. So people would feel comfortable sharing their research with the decentralized science community, but only if there was this stakeholder collaboration in setting up the standards for depositing that IP. So it really has to bring everyone in together. And that also includes lawyers and VCs who might invest in projects, which may be specialist deep tech VCs. And 3, focus on facilitating early stage disclosures that don't void patents. That was really my major insight that came from the incubator. Was, again, I've said it a few times, but everyone just does all this research. It's not even that they want to commercialize it themselves. Most professors don't want to leave their cushy jobs in a university. Everyone knows that. But the reality is they want to be acknowledged for the research they've done. They want their peers to understand. It's sort of like peer review isn't even about getting published. It's just about your colleagues in your area, so niche of 12 people in the world working on something, know that you've done that, right? So that was some of the things that were the next steps, which isn't necessarily relevant now, but that was part of this was my final presentation on stage in front of the community. That was the team that I worked with. So one is myself. I'm a lawyer by trade. I did a PhD, was around AI when I discovered blockchain. Spent time in private equity. I had a blockchain coder as part of my team, an IP lawyer, and one really important piece of the team was a university commercialization expert from one of the best universities in Australia for commercialization, certainly the best university in Australia for startups. And he was very valuable. He is very valuable in just talking about the problems that commercialization departments face. Yeah, that's it. There's a website that we set up at the time, which sort of talks about basically the problems of these issues. But this is my last slide, which isn't part of the presentation, but it's really the lessons for the decentralized science community on trying to translate a DeSci idea to the wider science community. The first point is that even PhDs don't get blockchain. So I definitely didn't mention DAOs to anyone because people get stuck at blockchain. So in this community, you're talking about people working in chemistry, working with polymers, working with renewable energies, working with solar panels, all kinds of things that people think is a product that can be commercialized, that have some kind of commercial nous. They have, PhDs in all kinds of things, physics, chemistry, they still don't get blockchain. we forget sometimes as a community how little people understand about our space. It's such a niche space. Like I spend all my time in crypto, most, almost every day. Everything I do has some connection to crypto. Um, and we forget people do not understand it. So I would go through a high level pitch explaining my idea, and people would go, hang on, hang on. And this is really smart people, top of their field in chemistry, would say, hang on, go back to the start. What is blockchain? Just explain to me what is blockchain. And that's how many conversations start. Um, two is probably not so much an issue that crypto is a scam or crypto is volatile. Um, people, FTX was a really bad marker for the industry. It was a bit of a stain on the industry for everyone. Um, you can't ignore this point when you're trying to deal with the scientific community. They, especially if they're career academics doing deep research, they are very, very conservative. But three is the powerful point for the community. Everyone gets decentralized science. It's not that they understand decentralized science, but they understand the problems with academia, right? The problems that Maria just talked about, everyone gets it, right? I mean, when I did my PhD, my examiner basically told me I needed to cite him. One of my examiners told me I needed to cite him in my research. Uh, I've worked with academics who tried to steal my papers as a postdoc. I mean, this stuff is just crazy. The whole industry is completely, everyone knows it. Like you can have this conversation with everyone, they get it. Everyone gets the problems. Again, VitaDAO is a really strong reference point, number 4. Um, it's just a way to say this is being done already. Again, like I said, it's not theoretical. And my final point, the final point of my presentation is what I found is that a lot of people working through the incubator with me, including the mentors who are very savvy people who have operated multiple companies in multiple fields, what they do is look for commercial opportunities. They're not locked to any one industry or market segment. Some of them, one of them in particular, told me after the final presentation I just gave, which obviously I didn't really explain it in the way that I did on the stage. He said, "I get it. I finally get what you're trying to do." And everyone loves this idea of trying to bring research into a more open and free environment. Um, but it takes people a while to actually get it. So yeah, that's basically my presentation. I'll stop sharing. Um, I think it's just important. This is a communication thing. So I work part of my time as a journalist and a writer. It's really just trying to make sure your ideas are simple, that you have a hook, that you have a call to action. And I think the best part about decentralized science is that people get the call to action. The worst part about decentralized science is that people don't understand blockchain to start with. And the biggest problem that everyone needs to be aware of is that people don't trust us. They don't trust the crypto community. They don't trust the blockchain community. They just don't know why they need it. So when you're communicating your messages as to why your startup is a good idea or why your project is a good idea, you need to make sure that, and I don't mean this in any patronizing way, but you have to start at the beginning and you have to hold people's hand and take them on a journey, right? Because leadership isn't about saying, I've got the best idea in the world. Leadership is about holding someone's hand and taking them with you on that journey. And that's my lessons from this. I don't know where all my research and work will end up. I don't know if it's going to be a viable project or a commercially viable project, but I'm certainly pursuing it. And I'm looking to register the DAO shortly and then play around with its permutations, um, incubating some of these ideas that I've learned from dealing with the wider community. And the main point to finish with my presentation is just that Australia's scientific body, CSIRO, which is a pretty good organisation, I think. I don't say that parochially. Australia punches above its weight in some things. Australia is also a very small country. It's built off the back of many international students and PhDs that have a desire to change the world. Um, but they were very supportive of this. I was the first crypto project to go through the incubator. There was goodwill towards the project, and again, the goodwill starts with people getting the problems of academia. So thanks a lot, and I hope this was valuable for the community in terms of maybe you know all of this already, but if you don't, just thinking about how you position your messaging.
They pay like
Yeah,
$10,000 for a paper. It's the same for us. I'm in the public health area, and $10,000 in Brazilian money. It's it's the price of a car.
yeah, yeah. No, I understand.
not so popular car, but and why do you? How can? What are your thoughts about prestige in
Yeah,
this
so so
industry?
so 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 if you saw my slides that I conducted so many interviews, um, that was based on like just asking the questions and saying, what do you think about this? What I mean, the way it was structured was not me trying to tease the answers out, but their views. And I honestly found a lot of professors just care about their position in peer review. That's all they care about. They're not going to leave their job at the university when they have tenure to go and start a startup. They don't want to do that. But it's so strange when you think about the profession, right? Like I've lost interest in it because of peer review. Like, so 12 people in the world who have your niche read your work. Do you know what I mean? Like, or maximum a few hundred, a few thousand people are reading your work. And oftentimes they're just retrofitting a theory to what they've done already. Now, not hard science, because hard science is very mathematically verified. I worked in a business school, right? So it's a bit different. But yeah, it's absolutely true that peer review was important to them. And if you could have, so people talk about, token bound accounts or soul bound tokens or that kind of thing. I think that is part of the future metrics of this because academics, at least in some way, want a verifiable thing to say, I invented this. The world needs to know that this is my research. And they care about that more than any monetary reward in a lot of cases. I swear, my interviews validated that. That's what all they care about is their peers saying that they're top of their field. And that's not everyone, but that's professors at a certain level that made it to that level. They at least want to prove that people respect their work.
Thank you.
It's very strange. I get the question. It's a good question because it is. The industry is strange. Like if you could start a company that changed the world and solved cancer, I prefer to do that than like have a peer-reviewed article. But I mean, it's a part of the journey. I mean, there's a bit of both. Some instances you can do both, but it's open source communities in computing understand this much more intimately than other communities that are gated, right? So if you have to pay $10,000 US to publish in a journal, which is ridiculous, and I think it's ridiculous, um, that makes it a gated community. So only certain universities in the world, which we know now, just because your name's Harvard doesn't mean anything. It just means that you've got a legacy. That's all it means, and they're actually not the greatest universities in the world by any means. Um, but if you're coming from the developing world, you don't have the same opportunities. And I think this is one of the greatest problems in the world, right? I've got a friend who calls it the ovarian lottery, and I'll finish on this point. But it's if you're born, in Mumbai, you didn't choose that, right? That doesn't mean your educational opportunities are going to be the same as someone who was born in New York or whatever. So we're losing human potential and human capital. That's why decentralized science is exciting. That's why crypto is exciting if we get it right. But getting it right is hard.
That's a good point.